Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Jedi Hill. Our channel is all about freedom, as you know about my New Atlantis project, building blocks and floating islands. That's why we got the sea behind me. Today's special guest is an author, an luminary, a father, a coach, and entrepreneur who runs the seven-figure circle $1 million mastermind. Thank you so much for being on, Fredrick Douglas. Bussy. You're still muted.
Jedi, how are you, man? Great to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
Fantastic. I thank you for being on. I've known Fredrick here a few years. We've taken some other courses and mastermind groups together to, propel our business. And, that's one thing I've always been big. You're taking that responsibility, learn from whoever and whatever you can to get you to the next steps along the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We've known each other for several years, and it's a process of learning and growing. It's exciting to see you continuing down the path to your big idea, your big vision, and it's exciting and really inspiring. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So what is the seven-figure circle $1 million mastermind?
Well, that's my free Facebook group where we have a host of content, a lot of great free trainings, master classes, things of that nature. We support entrepreneurs who are building seven-figure plus businesses on their journey of entrepreneurship. It's a community where we support people because entrepreneurship can be very lonely, as you know. It feels like when you become an entrepreneur, and now because there's this ecosystem of YouTube and courses and gurus, etc., that it feels like there's a lot more out there. But when you're out in the quote unquote real world, 99% of people have jobs, 99% of people have a different path. And so the thinking that goes along with entrepreneurship is very, very different. It's even considered radical or unsafe in many ways.
Hold on. The common people, the low socioeconomic class, think it is unsafe because they don't know better. Well, you and I know, like, if you're trying to take the safe path for a job, you're putting your life in. Nothing wrong with the job, just over broke, but you're depending on someone else to make sure you always have a paycheck.
Right.
And when you're willing to put forth the efforts that other people aren't, you get to live lives that they could only dream of.
Yeah, I used to say that you, as an entrepreneur, you learn to live your weekdays like your weekends like the weekday, so that eventually you can live all your weekdays like the weekend.
Mm-hmm. I feel you. I know me and my honey both burn our candle at both ends a lot, so we do try and take Sunday as like an off light day to go hikes in the woods and just get out of the office so your brain can reset.
Yeah. I when I'm working with entrepreneurs, a lot of times what I tell them is that you want to be able to calibrate your time in a way that you can get the most out of it. So I have a free course called the Time Freedom Formula, which really is talking about how you can learn to mold time and shape it the way that you really want to. And the way we think about time, we often think we need to be spending more and burning more, but there's also physiological and biological and psychological evidence that teaches us that rest is important too. Like, rest is actually doing something to benefit your business and your goals as well. So yeah, I think it's important. You guys can set aside that time. I do the same thing. Really hardcore boundaries around family time and things of that nature, So yeah,
you have to be able to take the time where like this is family time.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise your brain just you don't stop.
You don't. And that one of the most powerful things that people don't really realize, right, is the power of, so people talk about what's the most valuable resource that you can have in your business or whatever. And a lot of times we think that that resource is time or money. But the most valuable resource that you can have is presence, focus. And when you can, one of the things that I think strips us of our power and dilutes us of that is the fact that if you're always thinking about your business or always working on it, then you can't be fully present because you're actually always distracted, right? Mm-hmm. You're always thinking about what's coming next. You can never be fully present in the moment. And so creating those
And you'll
boundaries,
mess up on sales and everything else when you do that.
you
Like if
will.
you can't be here now.
Right, right. You'll miss out on that. If you've ever been on a sales conversation or something like that, and you've been distracted from what the person is saying in the moment. And I've done this, especially when I was first learning sales and first getting on sales calls. I would always be thinking about the end, which is the pitch. What are they going to say then? And I wasn't focused in on what they were saying in the moment, which would have allowed me to be able to influence that decision in the direction that I wanted to go, which is to end up in a sale, right? And so this is what happens with most people. Most people are thinking about what they want. They're thinking about something else. They're thinking about the grocery list, or did I leave the iron on or left the building? And so it's being able to be fully present in any particular moment. That's where you harness your greatest power, which is your focus, to be able to be the most creative, the most impactful, the most influential. Yeah.
Well, and only when you're like, you actually shut off your reactive brain and you're actually here in the moment, that's the only time you can feel peace of mind. And that's where the real mental freedom comes into play.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is one of the people who helps me to stay focused. You on Duolingo? Okay, so you can do that, or you can do some other PBS gigs. You can do games on PBS gigs. Okay, you can do that.
That's awesome. And you know, you did a perfect example, just what you said there. Like you completely like, hey, family must come first. You completely disengage, take care of the little one you are raising, which is one of our most important duties on this planet, to raise the next generation. And then coming back to the conversation.
Yeah, I used to feel guilt. I think one of the greatest gifts of the past few years is that when the whole world had to unplug, we kind of normalized the idea of being on Zooms and these calls like that. And our families got to kind of be more intrusive, if you will, live. And for some of us, you know, we got to realize, well, this is always how it should be. They're always the priority, right? Work is the distraction from family, not family distraction from work and entrepreneurship.
Say that one again. People need to hear that one.
Well, just that work is a distraction from family, and family is never a distraction from work and what we're building. And so if we say that, and which we often do, right? Well, I'm building this for my family. I'm building generational wealth. I want to leave a legacy, right? And I think I made a post maybe last week or so, and I talked about the fact that we always talk about building generational wealth, and we never focus on building generations. And so those are the stories that we want to be able to tell, but who we tell those stories to. And our friend Dan Giulianotti, he was talking on a post about how he was at a conference a while ago, and he was talking about how one of the speakers asked everyone to raise their hand if they could name their grandfather, right, or their grandparents. Could you say their names? And so people raised their hand and said, now, how many of you can name your great-grandfather or great-grandparents? And the hands went down. And so there's only a couple of hands left up. And he said, well, how many can name your great-great-grandparents? And then the hands really went down. It's like the realization sinks in that we say that we're doing this to leave a legacy, and yet most of us are forgotten by even our own lineage over the course of a couple of generations, which is insane, right?
Even the same generation. I think of how many people you've met. I know I've met countless where, you know, their kids are getting to be adults and they realize they spent their whole life of their kids growing up being in the business and never being there for the kid. Like, yes, you're doing the job to support the family, you're doing the business to support the family, but that's just a tool, just like the old days going hunt and get meat. The family is the actual main focus. You got to build the family unit. You got to get yourself right so you can build the family, which builds the community, which builds the nation. Paraphrase from Confucius.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we lose sight of that because we are so afraid of not succeeding at it, that if we don't throw our whole focus at it. And it actually talks a little bit more to what we're talking about presence and focus, which is that we have beliefs about who we are and what we're capable of doing. if you believed that you could build your business or leave a legacy, build something you could leave a legacy in 25 hours a week or 10 hours a week, then you would do that. But the real fear is that it's so elusive, it's so hard, that if I don't spend every waking moment thinking about this, it's going to fall apart. It's going to slip through my hands. And what I'm learning is that by applying the focus and intention to the right things in the right order at the right time, you allow everything to align in just the way that it should be, right? So I'm not out there chasing deals that don't matter for me. I'm not out there chasing clients that are not aligned with what I want. I'm not moving out of a mindset of scarcity. It really is about creating from a place of freedom, not creating to get to a place of freedom, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And you have to start from the word. Like the whole concept of this country was based on the concept and feeling of freedom. The ability you can do what you want to do when you want to do it, and you can work towards liberty, which is the resources to have what you want to do when you want to do it.
Right. And so, we have this history, which is complex, of course, because not everybody had that ability. But moving forward, we now have the understand the capacity that we were all created to be able to do that thing. And there's no reason that you have to be restricted by a lot of the other artificial factors that we believe are really holding us down, right? That are really restricting us, right? One of being time, one of them being money. It's not that those things aren't real, but they're not real in the way that we think they are, right? And we can be the master of our own destiny, our own course, and understanding how we're naturally endowed with those things. As the Constitution says, you're endowed by your creator, right? So what are we really endowed with? What are we actually leveraging in terms of being able to create that freedom and that time forward, that journey forward, and the legacy that we want to leave behind, in the moment, being fully present and fully powerful in that thing.
And we got to take it step by step. It's a day by day thing. It's we must preserve the freedom for each generation. We must work for it. And like you were talking about earlier, we've forgotten our heritage for the generations. We've forgotten that we are literally all one. We are all connected.
Yeah.
And once we get that, it's like, okay, we are all free. We all get to do it. And we can have unity through specialization instead of what we've got, where you've got half of them are trying to make you into the Borg and just assimilate you into their little boxes.
Well, I think that's one of the more dangerous things that we have seen, is that there's societies have always been experiments with social engineering, right? At any particular time, whether you are, in a village full of huts where you huddled together for warmth and built fires, and you had hunting expeditions to bring in enough meat for the winter, whatever the case may be, right? There's always been experiments with social engineering to create a culture of safety. And unfortunately, now what we have is sort of a de-evolution of that idea, right? And so we've lost sight of who we were originally created to be as individuals, as I say, like divine human beings, right? And we've lost sight of that factor, and then we also lose sight of what is most important. How are we going to be able to continually build on the gifts that we were given individually, and use that collectively to make the world the environment and the place where it was supposed to be in the first place?
Yeah, and we have so much potential that's just wasted. I remember Einstein saying once, some of the most advanced people on Earth have used merely a tenth of what their brain potential is.
Yeah.
And if we just most people I don't even think use 1% of it. and if we get everybody to at least attempt, let's get to 2 or 3% at least. Come on, let's try.
Let's double or triple that capacity, right?
Right? We could fix all the major world problems. Most of them are fairly simple. It's just learning how to work together and seeing that, you might have differences between you, but we're all still people working on becoming human beings.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm- and you know, I'm from the native culture, so it's like I do have the things like, you know, I remember being younger and seeing like the money is the green skin, the root of all evil. You know, the biblical teachings were that way as well. And then you get a little further along and you realize like, no, that's it's just energy. It's no different than a hammer or a tool. It's all in how you use it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if
It's a reflector of value, not the source of it.
right, it's just a energy exchange or currency.
Mhm.
You know, it flows like the sea.
That's why they call it the current currency, right?
Mhm. And if people understood that, like I knew about the things that have been going on in the world the last few years, and you know, I don't invest in the military industrial complex or pharmaceutical companies or other things because of ethical reasons.
Mhm.
And if more people voted with their dollars, we could change it any way we want.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting concept because I don't think people necessarily think of it as voting. They think that, especially when you're using the money to serve a more fundamental end, right? So it's keeping the lights on, it's putting food in the refrigerator. You don't think of your money as a political or a capitalistic. I don't even say capitalistic, but it is a leverage tool, right? So I can use my money here and by using it in a particular space. People do that when they get upset, but it's not always a proactive, intentional thing. And I think that if you are engineering your life in a particular way, you start to see the lenses, uh, see the world through lenses of, well, I want to activate my energy in this area to see this area of the world be able to elevate and to grow. And certainly you can do that by the things that you buy. You can do that by the places that you invest. I mean, we do it even with our families, you know, our children's or our spouses. One of the ways that we want to support them in being able to grow is to send them to school or where we send them to school, the things that we buy for them, you know, the type of food that we feed them, etc. So those things that, like you say, are in their own way types of votes for
Mhm.
the world that we want. And if we were more intentional about really every aspect of how we live our lives, I think it would have a much more far-reaching effect, and we will be able to see those ripples continue outward for generations to come.
Well, the ripple effect's huge. I mean, just like you talked about food and water. Like I know here in the Cleveland metro area, Detroit and Chicago specifically, they have an abnormally higher level compared to the rest of the metros in the country for fluoride added to the water,
Mm.
which has been shown to, especially in the development of children, significantly drop their IQ.
Mhm. Mhm.
I thank God I grew up in the middle of nowhere on well water that didn't have any of that stuff. That's maybe why I'm a little weird. Didn't have all the poisons in the water. But you know, the foods you get, whether you're going the organic or the pesticides, it changes the way the gene expressions are. And we found we can turn on and off different genes by the environment,
Yeah.
you know, to reduce the amount of traumas we have. And we can improve not disability, but depression, bipolar, and all these things just by having the right foods to regulate our hormones better.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Uh, One of the, we talked about focus and presence earlier, right? One of the things that um, really serves to undermine our greatest efforts to be anything, to accomplish anything, is kind of the way that we're not able to focus on the smaller, quote unquote, things that affect us, even our diet, right? So, and I know my wife and I have been, so I was raised vegetarian. She converted her family, literally, she converted her family to vegetarianism probably, she's maybe 14 to 15 years old. And so we've been vegetarian, but becoming even more healthy in that journey. So more vegan, more raw, and things of that nature. And you notice the difference as you transition, right, into how your body feels. And the luxury that you have when you can feel the difference in how your body feels is understanding the effect that it has on you. When you go back, you know, if we're on a road trip, all that's available is McDonald's. Okay, we're gonna get some fries and some shakes or whatever. Like I wake up the next morning. Yeah, I wake up the next morning feeling that thing. My head is like throbbing or whatever the case may be. And it's like, oh, I ate differently. And so
You can't think it's clearly, you're sluggish,
all of those things. Yeah, your body, you just feel bloated or full or whatever the case may be. And now you recognize it's like when you put polluted gas in your car, right? You notice the dip in performance, but you wouldn't notice that if that's always how your car had been performing. You would just think that your car was trash, right? And I think that's how a lot of us are moving throughout the world. And we see that. And so there's a normalization of this idea because that's how everybody is. And we think that there are certain people that are special because they were raised in the middle of nowhere with well water. And so their mind can think a little bit differently, more clearly, and access information much more sharply. And that's unfortunate because everyone should have the access to be able to live life at that level. And we would hope that through conversations like this, as more information gets disseminated and people become more curious and more adamant about the things that are put in their foods, the medicines that they're being given, about the demands that are being placed on us stress-wise in terms of just everyday regular life.
Your attention, like everything, like, yes, we're talking on a screen now, but it's a dedicated purpose. Where like how many people are just, the whole day just scrolling, hitting the dopamine, throwing off their hormones, and they're constantly squirrel distracted every which way. They can't sit and focus for even 2 minutes.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, that's a practice thing, right? I was just before this, I did a podcast interview with a friend of mine. He was building a platform for leaders, and he was talking about this statistic. He said that there are something in the neighborhood of 2.51 trillion bits of data being uploaded to the internet at every single day. When you think about that, how many times we're getting thousands of notifications on our cell phones every single day. The average person has between 40,000 to 70,000 separate thoughts. And so there's what's going on inside your head, and then there's all the internal stimuli that's pounded it, against your stream of consciousness. And so you think about it, if you have a goal for your business, if you have a goal for your life, to be able to focus on that thing in a singular way, consistently throughout the day, would nearly be impossible if you don't have these parameters and boundaries set up to be able to safeguard that, because otherwise you have to protect your goal. You think about that line in The Pursuit of Happiness. They say, you have a dream, you got to protect it. Well, if you have a dream, yes, you have a goal, you have to protect it. You have to insulate it from all these assaults that are happening against your consciousness. And that's an intentional thing.
Well, and that's why the ancients would tell you not to tell people your goals and visions, because the other people would talk to you and put doubts in your mind. So unless you had a strong enough will to not be swayed by their doubts, it could poke a crack in your manifestation or your plans. You let the doubt in your head so you don't build and do as good as you could have. And so you do fail because you just toned yourself down just a little bit.
The interesting thing about that too is that those doubts are often planted there long before we're conscious of them. And so we're only reminded of them in the social circles and constructs that we have. It can be your own family, right? Because doubts are our psychological way of seeking safety. And so it's that warning light that says, hey, is this really the right way to go? Like, you might be veering off that path, because that uncomfortableness can sneak up on us internally, right? But when we tell our dreams or visions to other people who are not equipped to nurture them, then they will do the same thing for us, because that same alarm bell goes, oh, no, we can't do that. That's not a safe path. Well, what are you going to do about your savings? Or what about, don't you need a job? What about a 401k? What about health insurance? And so all of those things come up, right? And it's a false flag that we're being raised all the time when you understand the whole landscape of it and understand that, well, look, I'm here to bet on myself because I have a zone of genius. I have a gift that I was given. The gift isn't going to fail. I talk about that in my book, Breaking Orbit. I talk about the fact that there's 3 laws of giftedness. And one of those laws is that no gift can fail at the purpose for which it was created. right? So you look in the natural universe, birds always fly, water always flows, wind always blows, the sun always shines, grass always grows. Everything that was created in the natural universe was created for a purpose, and it doesn't
Yeah.
fail that purpose. So you have a purpose, I have a purpose. We're not going to fail at that purpose.
Absolutely. And the laws of nature, the universal laws are absolute. You can't break them. You can only break yourself against them.
Right, right. But when you are in alignment with them, which means that when you are in alignment with your own gift in the natural way that you were created, you're not going to break either. You are as inevitable as the sunrise in what you create.
Yeah, work with the laws instead of trying to work against it.
Yeah.
And that goes back to your food, the different rhythms and the sleep cycles. Like some people are night owls, some people are morning people. You got to figure out what works for you because it's different for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, those circadian rhythms are weird.
Well, it's funny because I have, for as long as I can remember, been the type of person I would go to bed. I wouldn't get sleepy until around 2 o'clock in the evening, and at night, 2 o'clock in the morning. I listen to that. Yeah. So 2 o'clock in the morning, so that rhythm, trying to go to bed earlier, I still wake up. So it's that type of thing. Understanding how your body works, your own psychology, your own biology, physiology. Those things are important because the idea of everybody getting up at 6 a.m., working from 9 to 5, the majority of the world is on that rhythm, and yet most of us are in slight variations or extreme variations of that. And so when you having the courage to say, I need a job that I can work, I can literally wake up at 9 a.m. and I can go to work from 11 to 7, or I can work from 11 to 3. That's my peak performance time. That's when I think the best. I'm most creative. Finding that and being able to foster that, is something that's really important. And most people don't have the support system to be able to do that in their own lives.
I get you. And it's funny, you mentioned how most people are in that same 9 to 5, they get up around 7, 8, and they just go through. And, being more sensitive to it, I've always found my most creative times are like when I wake up way before the sun rises and everybody else is still asleep, or it's like you said, that late night after everybody's already gone to bed. And it's like, the atmosphere, the collective consciousness like settles down so you can actually think.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny because you can feel the stillness in the world, right? At that late hour or the early morning. I think it's what we're all kind of searching for is that stillness within ourselves. And so sometimes we seek it in the environment around us to be able to foster that. But I think if you can cultivate that as much as possible, and you can align it with those times when you know that you are the freshest, the most energized, the most aware, most present, you can find that you can get more exponential results for what you want to build out of your business or in your life. Most people are just not as attuned to that as they could be or they should be. So it's great that you know that about yourself and you can activate that when you need to.
It definitely comes in helpful. I know I physically go ground out, which I know a lot of people think is woo-woo, but it's electrochemical. You're getting the electrons from the earth are flowing into you, which has an antioxidant effect in the body, which reduces swelling and inflammation, which means you feel better and think better.
I was watching a video where a guy was talking about that and talking about all the different ways that we get electrons donated to us, through the earth, whether it's the ground or leaning up against a tree, or through still air, like oxygen itself, lending that to you through rushing water, still water. So it's fascinating how, again, we're kind of talking about the alignment of the universe and natural laws, right? But we are natural beings. And so being in a natural environment, we've actually created these insulators, like these sidewalks, city sidewalks and streets and steel skyscrapers and, homes that are built of brick. And so it insulates us from the natural oxygen. All these things that are meant to supercharge us. We're actually restricting ourselves being able to do that and fighting against, again, like you said, the laws of nature. So finding ways to realign ourselves, I think, is so important. We create
you got to take your time alone in the woods. Like I was really blessed. I had over 1,000-day camping before I was 18 years old. So yeah, was Boy Scout, Order of the Arrow, and I love camping in the outdoors. And after I got to adult, I lucked out. I went to Colorado where it was all seasonal work on the western slope. So you'd get your job would end around April 15th, and it'd kick up like right before Memorial Day weekend. It would shut down right after school started in early September and kick up around Halloween.
Yeah.
So I'd get like 2 months of camping vacations in the middle of nowhere every year.
I mean, that's awesome, to be able to experience that. My wife is definitely an outdoors type person. That was never my thing for real. But I was always outdoors as a kid playing. And it's funny because as hot as it feels now when I'm outdoors, I sit there and think, man, how did we go out here and play for hours and hours at a time in the middle of the day? But there is an energy that you get when you're constantly in that environment, that space. So yeah, it's hot and humid. I grew up in the South, American South, so it's humid in a way that most people don't even understand. But, well, that's how I grew up, and
yeah, you go take a shower to dry off. It's so humid out there.
and you're sweating by the time you get out of the shower again. So it's
Well, thank you, Fredrick. And any last words for people, and how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, I just want to thank you for having this conversation where we can kind of share some thoughts about how you can create more freedom and impact in your life. I think that for those people who are interested in continuing to pursue that path, and they can certainly pick up my book, Breaking Orbit, Rip Out of the Regular by Unearthing the Power Within. It's available on Amazon. You can simply search it there as well. And if you want to find more information about me, you can find me on all social media, Fredrick Bussey, on the Facebook. I'm on Instagram, Fredrick.Bussey, Fredrick Bussey on Twitter, TikTok, and feel free to find our Facebook group, 7-Figure Circle, $1 Million Mastermind. Like I said, we've got a ton of free trainings, master classes, amazing content over there, resources to be able to support entrepreneurs in their journey for freedom and impact in this world.
So thank you, Fredrick. I'm for all the nice piece and talking about the focus and presence. And that's what we need more, especially for the young men, because if we don't build the families back up, build the nuclear family the way it was designed to be for millions of years, back to the tribal times, it's what we're built genetically for, and help rebuild civilization from the ground up. With your own mental freedom, with your own focus and presence, makes the world a better place. And y'all can reach me, Jedi Hill, social media. This is Jedi signing off.